Welcome to the Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast, your go-to resource for navigating the world of entrepreneurship. As entrepreneurs, we understand the importance of guidance and support on our journey. In this episode, we'll uncover the transformative power of mentorship, exploring its significance, benefits, and strategies for finding the right mentor.
Our podcast addresses tools and concepts that are useful for the launch and growth of entrepreneurial ventures. Your two hosts will be Professor Gary Palin and serial entrepreneur Ryan Budden.
Hello, Ryan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. What about you?
Doing well. Do you have an exciting weekend?
I did. I actually proposed to my girlfriend this weekend, so on a bit of a high still from that.
Well, look at that. Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. A big year to come.
Excellent. Now we have to go out and make some money.
That's right. I hear weddings are expensive.
I've seen people spend more on their weddings today than I spent on buying our first house.
Oh, I have no doubt that that's true.
Today, I wanted to speak about mentorship because that's a really interesting field and a strong benefit with launching and growing a business that people know about, but I don't think they truly appreciate the benefits of mentorship.
No, they certainly don't take advantage of it in my experience.
Very simply, mentorship is an experienced individual, the mentor, assisting a less experienced individual, the mentee, and they provide guidance, support, and knowledge.
Exactly.
Ryan, what experiences do you have with mentors?
I have quite a lot of experience with mentors, actually. Most of that stems with my relationship from you. So as most people listening know, you were my college professor. You retired from the university that I met you at the year that I graduated. And you've been a mentor of mine ever since. I don't think the lessons have ever stopped.
So in other words, you're about to choke out a few nice words about me.
I think I'm forced, right? That's why we're doing this episode.
It's been a pleasure to watch your career develop. And you're correct. We've had conversations over the years after you graduated and I left that university. We've continued this relationship and it's developed to where we're doing some business now.
That's exactly right, which for me is the ultimate. I'm now getting to participate in a business venture with somebody that I've looked up to for my entire career.
And now you're also on the flip side too, because just through this podcast, you're the mentor now.
That's right. And I'm also heavily involved in the Entrepreneurship Center locally. I like to give back because my career trajectory has changed quite dramatically through mentors.
Definitely. Well, I'd like to just touch on the power of mentorship and what having a mentor can bring to you. A big one starts off with someone with experience can share their knowledge and experience. So in other words, they know where the holes are in the field in front of you, and they can help you avoid those minefields, if you will.
Yep. They've made some of the mistakes and had to learn those lessons so that you don't have to go the long path and learn them yourself.
And we've also talked about developing your network. A mentor can accelerate that because you can tap into their network. For example, if you have a mentor and they suggest you contact someone, that might be someone that might be unapproachable, but all you have to do is mention your mentor's name and immediately they'll speak with you.
Yeah, I have certainly had that happen to me in the past. People that would be a dream to talk to are a friend or a close connection of a mentor that you've been working with. So they get to expedite that entire process, and the goodwill that they've put into that relationship typically gets extended to you.
One of the things, though, that I would advise people to be careful with, though, they therefore have to deliver because you can break the relationship of the mentor if you embarrass the mentor.
Absolutely. There's always added pressure if you're getting extended that olive branch by somebody that you respect.
It's not as much the quality of the deliverables that's important. It's just if you say you're going to do something, do it. And if you can't get there, communicate with the person what the obstacle is. So don't just leave them hanging because that will put your reputation and then therefore your mentor's reputation at stake. And your mentor won't appreciate that.
Yep. I always like to think around adding some value myself as well. If I'm asking for a favor during the course of that interaction, trying to think out how I can then add something back to it before I leave.
Now, mentors can also help with your skill development, and there are many different types of skills. But just for one, for example, I know I've helped you with public speaking and presentations. That's a skill that can be acquired, and it's very helpful to have a seasoned, experienced person to give you guidance in subtleties.
Right. The biggest thing you particularly helped me with was getting me in front of groups that I would never have access to and given me a place to fail, given me an opportunity to speak, whether it's just in a small group of 12 people and kind of throwing me out there as somebody that needs to answer a question, or actually getting up in front of the group, the room, the presentation forum, whatever it is, so that you can have some of these low barrier to entry experiences that then build into bigger platforms.
Definitely. I have a habit of doing that, and sometimes not even telling the mentee that they're about to speak in front of this group. And that helps you develop to be extemporaneous, be able to tap dance in front of a group and think quickly. And that's another skill that can be developed.
You once introduced me to a group of people as a wind expert, and I know next to nothing about wind. That was the introduction. I had to take it from there.
I don't recall doing that, but I bet I did. Personal growth and helping you develop confidence is keys to a mentor-mentee relationship. I think also helping you have a long-term perspective, because typically mentors are seasoned, older individuals, and someone just starting out, they tend not to be thinking in the long-term perspective, just from along the lines of you can't force timing, be patient, develop your plan for the long run. Exuberance of the youth in wanting an instantaneous result is something that a mentor can help that person with.
Sure. Yeah, the longevity. I don't know that I'd ever put that in perspective, but it's very true. What does an entrepreneur look like that's been doing it for 30 years and not 6 months? How does that experience, how does that impact their life, their family, the people around them? That's a really great perspective.
We touched on accountability with tapping into the network, but also in goal setting. A lot of times people miss out on how important it is for goal setting to keep your eye on the ball. Mentors can help with that also.
And just a check-in point is a big one for goal setting as well. If you've set this goal, what are the steps along the way? And is there an accountability partner? Somebody that is regularly keeping up to date with progress and seeing the forward momentum kind of helps it never stop.
So we've outlined the benefits of having a mentor. How do you find a mentor?
Yeah, there's the $1 million question.
Well, how have you gone about finding a mentor outside of your college professor?
Well, my college professor has made introductions to people, which has been fantastic. That and getting in touch with people in your local community. For me, it's the Nashville Entrepreneurship Center, getting dug into that as quickly as I possibly could and not being afraid to ask. I think if you're trying to get into a field, just starting to ask people if there's someone they know that would be willing to have a conversation with you. And start there. Asking someone to be a mentor right off the bat is kind of a big ask. People don't often know what that really entails. So start with a conversation and see if you can build a relationship with that person. And then just set up a cadence. And before you know it, they will either have become a good fit with you and become a mentor, or very quickly you'll both realize that maybe it's not the best fit.
Professional associations, I agree, are fabulous places for entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship centers. But to touch on that, I've had people come up to me that I've never met and ask me if I'd be their mentor.
Right.
And the answer is basically no. I try to say it much nicer than that and talk about time commitments. But I want to get to know the person to see what their values are, what their skill sets are. Is there a match? And you develop a relationship before you're willing to do that.
Yeah, that's the key, is build the relationship around it.
Other areas college graduates can touch into our alumni networks. There could be mentors there, and they can tie into the entrepreneurship programs at the university, even if they haven't graduated. Some of them have actual facilities to match successful entrepreneurs with the students and recent graduates.
Absolutely. And that could be true of your high school as well, depending on where you went to high school. I think any group, club, association you're a part of is an easy go-to to see who's gone through a similar experience and how you could be connected with them.
Incubators and accelerators sometimes have mentorship programs built in, so that's another possibility.
They absolutely do. And that brings up sort of a whole nother field of paid for mentors. So there are tons of organizations where it's a nominal fee, but there is a fee associated with getting to talk to somebody that's quite seasoned or quite specific into the goals and anything that you are trying to accomplish.
Another area that I would suggest someone looks at are industry conferences and events. You can find individuals with expertise in the domain that you're starting your business. If you attend those conferences, you start to network with those people and you can develop relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great one, especially for startups. In the past few years, the number of conventions that are being held on specific startup topics are exploding. When I was in college, these conventions were old school, large business seemed to be the emphasis. And there are so many of them now that are on emerging technologies, startup goals, fields that are brand new, that are ripe with startup activity in them.
We're seeing a lot of online conferences and events. I believe that that's harder to develop a network and mentors with online, because very often it's between the sessions, very often at the hotel bar that you start to meet people and you have those conversations that develops. I haven't been successful in developing any relationships with these online because I'm coming in, I'm leaving.
Yeah, I don't know that I've actually tried, but I imagine it would be a lot more difficult, especially because if you're a presenter, you're the only forward-facing figure. So everybody's sort of reaching out to you. There's no real exchange of that relationship. It's very one way, one person having a need and one person potentially not having the availability to meet that need.
Some of the online conferences will set up informal social interactions, but I find that the people that you want to develop the mentorship with, people you want to be your mentors, they're not attending those because they don't have to. And their time is very valuable.
Right. But don't be discouraged.
You have to put yourself out there, basically.
Right. You do. And it's an opportunity to show how ambitious you can possibly be. If you're set up in a way that makes it more difficult to meet that entrepreneur, meet that potential mentor, you can make yourself stand out by being tenacious and showing some of these qualities we've talked about on this podcast to get in front of them.
Now, there are some online platforms that support mentorship. I don't know anything about them. Micro Mentor, I believe, is one. SCORE, which is a senior core of retired executives, has some online platforms. I can't say whether they're successful or not. I don't know.
I've a little bit of experience with them. And I think a lot of that is just making sure that if you're going to use them, the person you're being paired with is really mission critical. So they have a very similar expertise to what you're trying to get into, or have a lot of expertise in a specific industry.
I did some research, some data points on the benefits of mentorship, and I was actually pretty impressed with this. I didn't realize businesses that receive mentoring are 20% more likely to experience growth compared to businesses without a mentor.
20%, that's huge.
Access to funding. Mentored businesses have a 2.5 times the likelihood of receiving external funding compared with non-mentored businesses.
I bet you that has something to do with the network.
Absolutely. Small Business Administration, SBA, they have done a study where there's a higher successful rate. 70% of mentor businesses survive past 5 years compared to 30% survive of non-mentor businesses.
Wow, that's enormous.
Just from a data-driven perspective, if I'm starting a business right now or running a business, I'm looking at mentorship. If I haven't taken it seriously, I'm looking at it much more seriously.
Absolutely.
I would encourage anyone to go out and seek mentorship opportunities. Don't push it, let it develop. It will serve them well, in my opinion, in the long run.
Yeah. One thing worth noting, I think, is I have seen young entrepreneurs fall into the pitfall of I want 50 mentors, someone in every single field. And that is a pitfall. It is not going to behoove you or the mentor to have 50 mentors. You're not going to be able to actually have the relationship that's necessary to drive value forwards and backwards if you have 50. The number of mentors I've had has fluctuated greatly throughout my career, depending on what type of startup I'm involved with at the time. I would say something in the 5 to 10 really being the maximum number of genuine relationships that you can sustain from a mentorship perspective. Do you have any sort of numbers around that?
I can say it's my personal experience, because I've had mentors as my career developed. And I think of specifically in academia, because when I first went into academia, I had no idea what academia was about. I was very naive. one seasoned professor developed into a mentor, and he was instrumental in my success and my growth. I wouldn't be in academia today if it weren't for this position. And that was one. As I move forward, I don't think I've had more than one at one particular time. I probably had a handful, but I've only dealt with one person at one time. So I'm dealing with a small number.
Right. And I think that's more common of true mentorship relationships. People that collect them a dime a dozen don't really go in depth, and they don't get as much value.
Yeah. And if I'm mentoring someone and they have 30 other people, I'm not willing to put as much effort into it personally.
Absolutely.
Be selective, be careful, but pursue mentorship, I think, is the bottom line.
I think it is.
You have a great day, Brian.
You too. Let's get entrepreneurial.
Let's get entrepreneurial.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. As always, you can head over to ProfSpirit.com to check out more resources and courses designed for you, the entrepreneur. Please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and others to get the most up-to-date information as it is released.